those moments of stillness, that place, that's the kingdom of God.
Sound of Metal is one of the most impressive and moving films of the last couple of years. It's a must-see film for everyone who likes compelling indie-style dramas, and this is exactly the kind of movie that feels authentic, deep, specific, and relatable all at the same time. But the most surprising thing to me about this movie, about a death punk metal drama, is that it tries to find an answer on how to find the kingdom of God. So Sound of Metal is about a touring musician called Ruben who seemingly out of nowhere begins to experience hearing loss. When a doctor tells him that his condition will rapidly worsen, he thinks that his music career and with it his life is over. This is a movie full of hard truths. When we get hit by tragedies in life, they often can feel like the thing we love the most is taken away from us without a clear reason. The protagonist in this film right here is someone who at the beginning seems like somebody who's completely free, like he's a touring musician with his partner, they make music for a living, life on the road, they just do whatever they want, running away from their past. But then as soon as his ability to listen to music and make music slowly gets taken away, we find out that this freedom that we saw in the beginning really had no real foundation. What follows is a coming of age story of a grown-up, and I love when films show coming of age as a lifelong process, not something that just stops when you're in your mid-20s, because so many people are really stuck in their own coming of age stories. And what the protagonist of this movie right here is going through, he's a rebel in every kind of way. He's fleeing from his past, fleeing from what is natural and good for him. And while this escape and rebellion seems like an interesting and attractive thing at first, all we see really of that is that it's really artificial and dark. And the first opening scene is like a music performance with this, it hurts every single time I see it. It's this harsh music, these offensive graphic lyrics, and it just shows you the darkness of the artificiality that the two main characters are escaping to. And it also is a complete contrast to where the film eventually will end up in a place of naturalism and light. And I really love how the opening scene really sets the tone and is the most graphic and disturbing scene in the whole movie. And this is a brilliant example of this, an R-rated film, a real authentic film. But it's that first scene where this is as dark as and as graphic as it gets, and it does enough, and is such a good example of a film that shows darkness in a concise, compact but effective way without exposing you to all kinds of craziness in order to show how messed up the main character is. As I said, the film ends in the complete opposite of that first scene, and it comes after the main character finally accepts his fate. He tries again and again to regain what was taken from him through artificial means and means of escapism. His fight against his calling is shown so empathetically and humanizing without ever over-humanizing the truth you are seeing on screen. And this is a very real movie. It oftentimes even feels like you're watching a documentary. There's a whole section of the film that is set in an institution for deaf people, and I mean, every single scene in there doesn't feel like you're watching a narrative feature film with actors. It just feels so real. The light is just supernatural but stylish and cinematic at the same time. And I think the cinematic naturalism of this movie is a really great achievement. It's no surprise that the writer-director of this film, Darius Marder, was a collaborator of Derek C. and Friends, who was the director of The Place Beyond the Pines. Derek C. and Friends is also one of the screenwriters of Sound of Metal, and The Place Beyond the Pines is one of my favorite movies, and really similar in that regard, that it also shows the biblical dimensions of personal struggles and coming-of-age stories in a way that's authentic, naturalistic, but cinematic and epic at the same time. Sound of Metal is of course clearly a secular movie, but it's impressive how much it has to say specifically about finding the kingdom of God. There's a beautiful dialogue scene with a counselor where he says that the acceptance of fate and the subsequent stillness we get from that, the peace we get from that, this is where the kingdom of God is found, and the kingdom of God and that place of peace and stillness will never fail you. It will always be there if you're ready to accept it. So rebellion may look like freedom, but it's really a box that you can really be flexible moving in. Now the film has a really beautiful and specific final scene. I won't give away the resolution, of course, but as a Christian, it's so awesome to see how they used images of a church and sky in the final moments of the film. And if you watch it, like, pay close attention to the specific selection of images they have in the final couple of minutes of this film. For me, Sound of Freedom is like an atheist version of the book of Job in the Bible. Now, Job was a man where God allowed everything to be taken from him, and Job just goes on to ask, why does this happen to me? Like, why? And in the end, really finding that God has a perfect plan, and asking why he does certain things often gets us nowhere. And in the end, he comes to a place of acceptance of God's plan and submits himself to what God asks and needs of him, and ultimately gets much more than he ever had. And the protagonist in Sound of Metal goes for a similar journey, but he doesn't have a God on his side. Like, he doesn't believe in God. So he goes through a journey of rebellion and painful setbacks, desperation, and additional loss and pain that would have been unnecessary if he believed in God and trusted in him, but were necessary for him to ultimately come to a place of acceptance. I also really want to highlight how brilliant of a title this film has, like Sound of Metal. Pay close attention to the way both sound and metal are placed in the film on a visual level and also on a sound level, of course. Like, the sound design is insane in this movie. It's perfectly executed, and Sound of Metal is has just all the authenticity and kind of cinematic experience that I want to have when I see a film. All the creative aspects aside, this is a great movie because it is a truthful movie that tells a specific kind of story through creative filmmaking that ultimately makes us reflect about our own weaknesses and faults in a very rewarding and deep way. And I really do hope that you get the chance to see this movie. If you've seen it before, like, rewatching it just opens up so many new layers, and it's a great experience each and every time I see this movie. I thank you so much for your time and attention watching my review right here. I wish you all a blessed day and hope to have you back in my next video.